to Mech for just like haranguing people to come here and make it like, you can't say no to Mech, he's awesome. So I'm really honored to be here, and I want to chat a little bit about being superheroes, if that's all right, and also the technology mindset and what we need to do individually if we want to actually change the world, which I have a big plan to do. So by day, what do? In 2009, I moved to New Zealand and built a nanotechnology lab, as you do, right? Because it's kind of fun. If I was going to build one, I wanted to build the best one in Australasia, so I figured let's just do that. So I managed to raise some significant money and build a lab that now the world comes to use, which is cool. Managed to get about 7,000 Kiwi students through now, being trained in a technology that didn't exist here since 2009. So how do we empower people? Number one, we educate people in stuff that we haven't had access to before and make New Zealanders experts in it. Why am I an engineer? I'm an engineer because it gives me the tools to be able to make a difference. And it's why a lot of people I know are engineers. How do you actually make a difference where you learn how to build stuff that solves problems? And that's it. So people look at me like, wow, you're a girl and you're an engineer. I'm like, no, I'm just a problem solver. And it gives me the tools to be able to do that. And most of my day is not spent out here. It's spent in dark room basements. I'm okay with that. I like it down there. It's quiet. Nobody harasses me. I have massive machines that do tiny things. So if you don't know where I am, I'm in the basement and I'm really happy down there. Or I'm on Twitter if you're a tweeter. That's cool. Look, I'm a mixed race kid. So my mom's Chinese, my dad's half Maltese and half English, and I've grown up all around the world. And what that means is I was a kid who never fit in anywhere. I was always the wrong color, I always spoke the wrong language, I always had a funny accent. And when you travel around the world, my dad was in the military, living in different places, and you never fit in, you get to see societies from a different perspective. You get to appreciate what it's like to be part of a society and how to integrate and how to feel excluded. And so I've spent my life figuring out how do we as a nation allow everybody to feel welcome here and realize the things that we do sometimes to put barriers up and make sure we open our doors. And my mum and dad are awesome, right? So they got wasted in a bar when they were 17, and voila, here I am. So it wasn't ideal. And neither of them had any qualifications. So my mom dropped out of school at 14 because she decided she wanted to go into gambling, which was not ideal. And my dad dropped out of school at 16 and joined the military. So when they were lumbered with me at 17, they were pretty poor and they didn't have an education, but they did the best they could with a screaming baby. So I turned out all right. But what that meant is I grew up in a lot of schools that were pretty low decile and didn't have great teachers, and also because I was the quiet kid, I was the kid that teachers ignored because I was a kid who wasn't punching other kids. And so when you're not punching other kids, they sort of put you in the quiet corner with a book and they leave you there while they go sort out the kids who are being rowdy. So I was forgotten a lot, but that was good because that meant I could sit quietly and read and do what I wanted to do. And I was really curious about how the world worked, but I didn't have much access to tech. Until my dad, when we were 8, came home and said, you know what, I'm really tired of living in poverty and I want to provide more for my family. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to night college, I'm going to try and study a trade. So he did, he decided to try and study the basic diploma in electrical engineering. And we went from having a dining table full of food to a dining table full of soldering irons and circuit boards and awesomeness. And I was like, Dad, man, what are we doing? He's like, we're soldering. I'm like, awesome, what does that mean? And he's like, well, when you take apart electronics and you look inside, it's got circuits, and circuits how the electricity's run around, and we're going to reroute the circuits so that electricity can flow so things work. I'm like, okay. So he gave me my first soldering iron at the age of 8, right? And all I did was burn my fingers for like a year, man. Those things are hot. But eventually, I learned how to solder circuits. And that's cool because you can make electricity flow and you can fix things that are broken. And then he came home with a book, and it was a book on computer coding. Now, we didn't have a computer, but I read the book. And so I now knew how to code a computer even though I didn't have one. And the thing with technology and access to technology is people think you have to be a guru in technology by having it. I was a technology guru and I didn't have any technology. I was reading about it. I didn't get access to my first computer till I was much, much older, and the second somebody gave me one, I knew how to program it. I knew how to use a computer more than people who got given one who played around with it, because I'd studied how things work. And so I now knew how to solder at 8, and now knew how to code computers at 9, all by just being curious. When we were 11, like, we'd never had a toaster before because those were expensive things. We saved up with Dad's new job, and we got a toaster. And I was stoked, hey? I was like, look, because toast for me was like Dad cooked toast. And by Dad cooking toast, he'd put it under a flame grill, and when the smoke alarm went on, he'd pull it out, right? That was always the sign. And so I always thought that toast was black, like a hockey puck. And then we got this machine called a toaster, and you could put the bread in, and it didn't come up. Like, you could control how brown it was. So I was obsessed with toast for a while. I was like, how does it do it? Like, you push the button, it comes out, it's all good. I was like, I just have to figure this out. So, being the kid that I am, who's curious, I took it apart. Now, lesson number 1, keep the screws. I didn't know that lesson. We owned this toaster for 3 days before I totally destroyed it and got grounded for like 6 months, it felt, because the only shiny thing we had in the house that was expensive, I broke. But while I was doing that, I got to learn about how it works, and the heater filaments and the timer, and anyway, this continued. So when we were a bit older, we got a video recorder, that's how old I am, and it played cartoons, and I was like, man, how does that happen? So I took that apart too, got grounded again. And then my first ever computer, which I could code with, I was like, this is amazing, all this tech in this small space, and I also destroyed that. I spent my whole childhood grounded by my parents for breaking expensive things. But what I did is I learned how stuff worked. So for me, being an engineer is understanding how things work and then being able to figure out how to make things better. So that was cool, and then I went on to study engineering, and now I'm in the basement, so I'm pretty happy there. And what do I do now? So I get to invent new technology. So one of the things we're working on with Callahan Innovation is making gecko hairs for medical robots. So right now, if you have a medical robot, it can help you around the house, but it's got huge hands that are really clumsy. If you need a medical robot, you probably need it to be gentle with your vials and your glass drug delivery systems. So we can take a gecko. If you take a gecko, you turn it upside down, you throw it on the ceiling, it will stick, just to let you know. If you pull it off, it will re-stick. Never-ending sticky tape on their feet. So what we did was we scanned their feet, we figured out it's got nano hairs on its feet, we copied that, we 3D printed that, we now line that on medical robots so they can help elderly people stay at home. This is being an engineer, right? We get to make things better for people. I create surfaces that are called super hydrophobic. They never get wet. They're going to help the medical industry, like when you've got blood on things, to keep them from contaminating. It means I never have to wash my clothes. That was the reason why I invented it, because now stuff just runs off me. But hey, that was just a side bonus. And so my big passion is, look, I'm really lucky to be where I am today, being a low decile kid who now lectures at the University of Auckland. I only got there because people opened the door for me. People gave me a chance, people gave me scholarships. I would never have gone to university without the scholarships and the rewards that I got. I worked hard for those, but my big goal now is how do I make sure that door stays open for those behind me who want to come through. And I teach at the University of Auckland. This is a horrible slide, but look, basically, the kids that I teach and the people I see in engineering don't look like me. Okay, I see a lot of white males, I see a lot of kids from privileged schools, and that's cool, but what I don't see is diversity. And for me, diversity is so important, because if you want to have a good team that problem solves, you've got to have people around the table who think differently than you. Because if everybody thinks the same, you're solving the same problem in the same way, and you might not be solving it in the best way. So I started thinking about why. Why am I not seeing more girls? Why am I not seeing more minorities? Why am I not seeing more Maori and Pacifica students in my engineering classes? So I went to schools to ask the question, because you've got to start in school, right? And I went to schools and I started talking to people, and I was like, what do you think about science? Because you need to study science to get into engineering. And they're like, man, it's boring, and it's too hard, and I don't get it, and I'm not interested, and it's just for boys. And I was like, okay, we've got a real marketing problem here with science. We've really got to change the way that we sell this stuff. And I was like, well, what do you think a scientist looks like, right? So I get people to draw what a scientist looks like. It's always a guy. It's always a guy with crazy hair or no hair, with big glasses and a lab coat. Like, I'm sorry, I don't look like that. Okay, this is not diversity. And I have never had. I've probably done 1,000 of these, over 1,000 kids to draw a picture of a scientist. I've never had one of them draw a woman, and I've never had one of them draw somebody from a minority group. They've always drawn me a white man, and I think we need to change that. But I blame TV, because I ask you to name me on TV one scientist who is not white and male. And so if we're growing up with role models who are like that, how do the rest of us think that we can be that? So we actually need to change the stereotype. So I started going to schools and be like, hey, this is what an engineer looks like. I studied science, I love this is what science is, this is why it's important. Nano Girl was invented and that's what she does. She goes around the country doing that. And I'm really passionate about thinking about what New Zealand wants to look like in 10 years and how I see it. And I want it to be much more diverse than it is now in fields like engineering and senior leadership roles. And so how do we get there? Well, we have to change the landscape. So you start by changing the media. You want to provide good role models to kids. You get on TV. I'm on What Now getting gunged all the time, right? Because you've actually got to get out there and show kids that there are other people who get to do this. I'm on Paul Henry every Monday. That's an interesting job, but anyway. Why? Because I want to show that scientists come in different forms. And if you read the Herald every Saturday, you'll see that I write in there too, because I want to make sure that people know that there are other types of scientists out there. We have different opinions and we come from different backgrounds. So I get to have cool mentors. This is Adam and Jamie from the Mythbusters. I was like, hey, can we do some stuff? They're like, yeah. I'm like, cool. What's interesting to know is neither of them are scientists. They're probably the most famous scientists in the world. Neither of them have degrees, and they're actually special effects people. And the reason why they're on TV is because they pay scientists to write their content and they read the auto cue. So it's not always what you think. So how do we make this bigger and better? Well, I decided that Nano Girl is one person, but we need to actually change the system. So I got together with Vaughan myself, who's the CEO of Vend, and we decided to set up a national charity. We're called OMG Tech. And I would love to bring you all with me. We are the charity that provides what I did as a kid, right? Pulling apart stuff, figuring out how things work. Because you might use the technology, but if you don't know how to actually understand how to write it, I always say that you can have a smartphone and you can use it, but that just means that you're reading the technology. What if you could write the technology? What if you could be the next person who develops that technology? That's how I want us all to be. And so we teach 5 different workshops over the period of a day. Robotics, coding, 3D printing, all of those things. The biggest difference is we have really basic laptops that are donated. You don't need high-tech stuff to do it. You can bring a tablet, well, we provide them tablets, phones, or computers. Like you can bring your oldest computer, it will still work, because all the software we use is open source, it's all free, so you can do this any way you want to do this. All of our robots are really cheap robots. We have 3D printers, but we're putting 3D printers into all the libraries. So if you don't have one or access to one, we're going to get one to your library so that you can have access to one, because I'm all about how do you get access in places that's free for people. And this is what we look like. Now, I have a mandate in that we don't run our workshops, and we run workshops that cover 600 kids over 2 days. We don't run them unless we're 50% female and 50% Māori and Pacific Island students. That is just the way it is. When you run a charity, you get to set rules, right? And my rules are, I want the minority to be the majority in this place. I don't want you to be the person who's like, I'm the only kid like me here. I want you to be like, all the kids are like me here. This is cool. I feel like I fit in. So if you look at our classrooms, this is what we look like. It's really diverse. It's full of girls. It's full of minority students who are now the majority. And we learn engineering, but we learn engineering through marshmallow catapults where we get to eat them at the end. Because the principles of forces are just the same. This is 5-year-old Dylan, who now has a YouTube channel teaching other kids how to do what he learned in our workshops. This is empowering the next generation to build robots. So we have a new project now, which is how do we build robots for $50? So we want to make sure that every child in New Zealand, if you want to have a school that has a robot, they're so affordable that we can do that. So we're bringing all the parts in now. If you want to buy a robot from us to learn robotics, it's $50 and we'll teach you how to build it from scratch so that every school in New Zealand can have robotics. We teach you about how your body works, right? This is measuring your pulse. This is a kid who I made run and he didn't want to. But at the end, he was like, wow, my heart's beating faster. Because science is free and science is everywhere. And you don't need expensive science experiments to figure out biology. You can do it for free by running around the block when we're chasing you. So how is this working? How do you measure success? You've got to measure metrics somehow. So we've had thousands of children through since we started a year ago. And pretty much all of them, the one that said no didn't fill in the form, but I wanted to include that data, has learned a new technology. They've learned how to code, they've learned how to program robots. My biggest challenge is that not all of them think they can continue to do this, and this is because of access to technology. So they come to us, they learn all these skills, and then they say, yeah, but I'm going to go home now, my school doesn't have this tech, and we don't have a library that has this tech. So our next mandate is how do we get this tech so it's accessible to all our communities around, not just in New Zealand, but in our Pacific Islands too. And that's about affordability, and that's about networking and connection. All of our workshops don't need the internet. You can run them all offline. So I want to make sure that it's not about whether you've got access to the internet, it's about whether or not you have access to a device, and the quality of that device doesn't matter. Our software is open to all of that. The biggest way I measure success is I survey every child that comes through and I track them and I say, what do you think about this? When you get to see kids who say, I never thought I could do this. I thought this was just for rich kids. Or I didn't know that I could program computers, but now I want to be a computer programmer. You get to really change the way that people think about who they are and who they want to be, and how they get to be the change of New Zealand 10 years from now. So what I want to leave you with the message is that science isn't just a subject. It's not something you do at school. It's a journey for life, so you can discover where you go and what you're doing. And it doesn't just happen overnight. I don't just start a charity and like, oh, we're going to fix everything. This is a massive project that actually needs a whole community around it supporting. But it does happen, right? You make little changes and everybody makes little changes and you actually get to change the world. And you don't have to be a superhero to do that. So before I leave, I've managed to convince the Ministry of Youth to give me some money. And I've set up a new youth leadership program in conjunction with a charity. So what I'm looking for is 20 young people. The rules are, you need to be in a Decile 1 to Decile 4 school, you need to be age 14 to 19, and you have to want to work with me for a year. And what I'll do is I'll teach you every one of those 5 workshops. You'll know how to code professionally, you'll know how to build robots. You will be the source of all of that information for your community, because all they want in exchange is a year from now, you go back to your community and you share your story. I want you to just be able to take one of these classes and take it back to whoever you want, your whānau, your marae, wherever you want to take it. And we want to do this together. So if you know a kid who you think would be really good, I'm not looking for the best academic kids, I'm looking for the kids who you know have the most potential, and a leadership program will be amazing for them. You guys in business, I need some mentors too. So if you want to offer your support, it's not going to be much time, but we want to provide as positive role models from industry to our kids who may not know about certain jobs, to make sure that we keep this connection going. Because where do you want to be in 10 years' time? Living in New Zealand, living in the islands? Well, what are you going to do about it? How do you make it the place that you want to make it? So with that, I'm Michelle. Thank you very much.
All right, before you leave, on behalf of the PCF, I'd like to present you with a little robot. It's a gift that I put together myself. I took it apart. Sorry. But thank you very much for being part of this year's World Conference. Another round of applause for Dr.